If you haven't seen the previous videos in this series, I will leave a link in the description below. If you haven't already, please support the channel by hitting subscribe, turning on notifications, and you can find and follow me on Twitter at the links below. And without further ado, let's begin. The fifth entry in the Lost Stories series is Paradise 5, written by PJ Hammond and Andy Lane. And for me, this is easily the strongest of this wave, definitely my favourite of them. The story sees the Doctor and Peri following the events of the Hollows of Time, visiting yet another of the Doctor's professor friends we've never heard of. Though in this case, said professor has disappeared after he was invited to a luxury space station called Paradise 5. So the Doctor decides the best course of action is for them to investigate and find out what happened to him. Something that I really appreciate about the story is the fact that it gives Peri an opportunity to take centre stage. As part of their investigation, she takes on the role of a worker and service person at Paradise 5, while the Doctor takes a more background role and stays undercover. Because of this, we get some interesting commentary on how Peri was presented in season 22.
Didn't I see you swimming in the space aquarium earlier?
Yeah, that was me.
Oh, it was a very impressive show.
Thanks.
Oh, especially the bit where that angel shark came up and pretended to try and bite your arm.
Entirely unrehearsed as well.
Oh, you look good in a bikini.
So I've been told.
Other cool elements of this story include the head of Paradise 5 being played by a pre-master Alex McQueen, and it's always great to hear his charming but slimy performance here, and I wouldn't be surprised if this was one of the main reasons he eventually got the role of the Master.
That is our pride and joy. The Paradise Machine is the reason why guests keep coming to Paradise 5.
I guess the people lie down on those couches?
Exactly. The upholstery is so soft it's like lying on clouds.
You don't have to sell me on it. And then those hood things come down over their heads?
And nanofilament cables infiltrate themselves through the natural fissures in the guests' skulls and make direct contact with their neurons.
You're kidding.
It's perfectly safe.
And what happens then?
That is the true secret of our success and the subject of several patents and trademark applications, so let's leave it there. Let's go and look at the staff rooms.
There's some pretty creepy stuff with these sort of cherub characters that sort of roam around the station, and the twist of what they actually are is pretty disturbing. Let's be honest, as a Gilmore Girls fan, the fact that there's a character called Lorelai in it is really the main reason this is the best story. The fact that everything else is just amazing is purely coincidental, so if you're going to listen to just one of these, I definitely recommend this one. Next up is the 6th released Point of Entry, written by Enlightenment author Barbara Clegg and Mark Platt. This serves as the traditional historical story for season 23 compared to the more experimental Leviathan. It sees the Doctor and Peri arriving in the 16th century and encounter the playwright / secret spy for the government, Kit Marlowe, who during a particularly difficult period of writer's block decides to take extreme measures to get new ideas for his plays. Such extremes as working with a zombified Spaniard searching for a blade of unbelievable power. Interestingly, this story sort of continues the theme of exploring the more realistic and gritty side of historical settings that was kind of mocked in Leviathan, as this story very much shows the warts and all aspects of this period in history, and there are some surprisingly graphic moments in this episode which I don't know how they would have got away with. I think it's just a case of, well, we're in a non-visual medium so we can be as violent as we want, as I said before, we have the Spaniard who is slowly decaying and described as not having any skin on his fingers and just being bones at this point. And I think even Eric Saywood would have told them to tone down the graphic aspects of this episode.
But look at his clothes. That's silk under all that muck.
Were you a gentleman before? What did you do to upset them?
I don't think he can say anything, Doctor. That's dried blood round his mouth. Oh, his tongue. Oh, no.
Nasty.
Who'd do that?
Let me see. Come on, old chap. I won't hurt. It's all right. It's all right. Let me see.
Oh, that's so brutal. It could be infected.
Ah, yes. You know, the Aztecs had rituals like this. Venisectional surgery with a string of cactus thorns.
Aztecs? But this is England.
Oh, that makes all the difference.
Overall, I definitely call this the second best of the wave. I do think it's a shame that Barbara Clegg never got this or her Fifth Doctor script, The Elite, made, because these are some really good stories, and honestly she could have been one of the best writers of the classic series had more of her work been allowed to be shown. But aspects like the really graphic violence might have put people off this particular story, especially the reaction to the stuff that occurred in season 22. I think it may have been a case of we want a more toned down season. But I still highly recommend it, and if you're squeamish, the lack of visuals will probably make it not as difficult as it would have been actually having to see what occurs here.